Am I audible, Shalin?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's start. Welcome, friends. I welcome each one of you on today's session in the GST rules series. And today we'll be discussing the remaining rules pertaining to the filing of returns. Before starting the session, I would like to mention two things. One, that the recordings of these sessions are available on YouTube. And anyone who is interested in just watching the recordings at a later point in time can certainly look into the same. Secondly, due to the pollution, last week we could not conduct the session. And we generally informing about the timings. Today also, it was scheduled to start at 11:30, but somehow since it was circulated that we are going to start at 11, so we dropped a message that we'll be starting at 11:50. Still, if some of the participants are facing any inconvenience, so I'm extremely sorry for the same. But kindly appreciate that this is a series wherein we are here to learn word by word, clause by clause. It's not a series wherein any expertise needs to be tested. It's merely the reading of law, clause by clause, so that we all are updated and are conversant with the changes which is being made in the rules from time to time. Anyways, friends, today we will be starting with rule 61, because till rule 60 we have discussed on the last occasion, that is day before, I think last to last week. And today we'll be starting with rule 61 onwards. One of the important rules. Screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is one of the important rules which has undergone a major change on 1st January 2021. Till 1st January 2021, the rule was reading in multiple subclauses, and GSTR 3B, whether it is a return or not, was the big question. Before starting and deliberating on the rules verbatim wise, let me share one brief history about this rule. As we all are aware, Rule 61 pertains to form and manner of furnishing of return. Originally, it was introduced in a fashion wherein GSTR 3 was said to be a return under Section 39. They've inserted Rule 61 sub Rule 5, wherein they have said that if, because of the extensions of the dates for filing GSTR 1 and GSTR 2, a return or a summary return can be filed in GSTR 3B. That was the original proposition of the government, which was a temporary arrangement initially for 2 months, July and August 2017, and then they continued it in the absence of GSTR 3. There was a judgment also of the Honorable Gujarat High Court, which is pending before the Honorable Supreme Court. And the judgment was of AAP and Company, which said, or rather the court said, that GSTR 3B is not a return under Section 39. So first and foremost, let me clarify this, that we have never pleaded before the court that GSTR 3B is not a return. We have only pleaded that GSTR 3B is not a return under Section 39. Because Rule 61 sub Rule 1 till 31st December 2020 was saying only one thing, that GSTR 3 is the return under Section 39 subsection 1. It has never said that GSTR 3B was a return, it has already, by virtue of sub rule 5 to rule 61, said that in case of the deferment or in case of the extension of the dates for filing GSTR 1 and 3, 1 and 2, GSTR 3B can be filed. That was a temporary arrangement for the purpose of accumulation, or rather I would say the payment of the taxes by the taxpayer, because in absence of GSTR 3, they need to have some alternate mechanism ready, and the alternate mechanism was the summary return, which was GSTR 3B. Now, from 1st January 2021, they have amended the law, and now they have made GSTR 3B as a return, because now they have amended Rule 61 completely. So therefore, we'll read the amended law. I was just having the responsibility and duty to inform each one of you about the brief background of Rule 61, and now we'll go through the rule which is applicable as on date. But till 31st December 2020, I am still holding a view that GSTR 3B was not a return under Section 39. I'm not saying, I'm again repeating, I'm not saying, I have never said that GSTR 3B was not a return or is not a return. I am only saying that GSTR 3B is not a return under Section 39, subsection 1. Because if it is not a return under Section 39, it is going to help us in a way that Section 16, subsection 4, and the implication thereof is not going to affect any one of us. But yes, now they have rectified the mistake, and in turn, rather I would say they have proved it, that GSTR 3B was never perceived to be a return. It was a very big mistake of the government side. It was never perceived to be a return. GSTR 3 was the return. And now from 1st January, they have admitted the mistake, and therefore it cannot be a retrospective amendment. It has to be a prospective amendment, that GSTR 3B is a return from 1st January 2021. Let me read sub rule 1. Every registered person other than a person referred to in Section 14 of the Integrated Goods and Services Tax Act, which is the online information data access retrieval system, or an input service distributor, or a non-resident taxable person, or a person paying tax under Section 10 or Section 51, or as the case may be under Section 52, which deals with TDS and TCS, shall furnish a return in form GSTR 3B electronically through the common portal, either directly or through a facilitation center notified by the commissioner as specified under. So therefore, it clearly says now that GSTR 3B is a return for all those persons who are registered under GST and are supposed to file the return under Section 39, except the persons who are covered in Section 14 of the IGST Act, input service distributor, non-resident taxable person, or a person who is paying under composition, that is under Section 10 or under Section 51 or 52. Except these persons, all the returns will be filed in GSTR 3B. And therefore, now we can say that by virtue of Rule 61, Sub Rule 1, GSTR 3B is a return. 1. Subsection 1 of Section 39, for each month or part thereof, on or before the 20th day of month succeeding such month. 2. Proviso to subsection 1 of Section 39, for each quarter or part thereof for the class of registered persons mentioned in column 2 of the table given below, on or before the date mentioned in the corresponding entry in column 3 of the said table, namely. So this is the table which is provided to us, wherein the column 2 has said that these are the registered persons whose principal place of business are in these states. Then it will be the date which will be the 22nd day of the month succeeding the month, and for rest of the states it is going to be 24th. So we need to keep and take the note of these states, and accordingly the due date for filing GSTR 3B is going to be finalized. Further, sub rule 2, it says every registered person required to furnish return under sub rule 1 shall subject to the provisions of section 49, discharge his liability towards tax, interest, penalty, fees, or any other amount payable under the Act or the provisions of this chapter by debiting the electronic cash ledger or electronic credit ledger and includes the details in the form GSTR 3B. So now subrule 2 clearly says that whosoever is registered under GST, he is supposed to make the payment of tax as per the provisions of section 49, not only the tax but also interest, penalty, fees, or any other sum which is payable under this law, which can be paid in accordance with the provisions of section 49. Therefore, we need to take cognizance of the provisions, and as we all are aware that the tax which pertains to output tax liability can be paid out of electronic credit ledger balance, and the rest of the payment which is pertaining to interest, penalty, late fees, or any other sum must be paid out of the electronic cash ledger. Subrule 3, every registered person who is required to furnish return every quarter under clause 2 of subrule 1 shall pay the tax due under proviso to subsection 7 of section 39 for each of the first 2 months of the quarter by depositing the said amount in form GST PMT 06 by the 25th day of the month succeeding such month. So this is the scheme which is provided under law, wherein the quarterly can be or quarterly filing can be done. It is based on certain conditions. The tax has to be paid on monthly basis. So therefore, it says that every person who is registered and who is falling into that scheme, he is supposed to pay for first 2 months because it is a quarter, therefore 3 months. The first 2 months he is supposed to pay in PMT 06 on 25th of the next succeeding month. And for the last month, the due dates are already finalized. Provided that the commissioner may, on the recommendations of the council, by notification, extend the due dates for depositing this said amount in form GST PMT 06 for such class of taxable persons as may be specified therein. So the due dates can certainly be extended. The power has been given to the commissioner, and therefore he can extend the due dates for payment of tax. Any extension, this is a second proviso, any extension of time limit notified by the commissioner of state tax or union territory tax shall be deemed to be notified by the commissioner. Now, everywhere, whenever you will read the law, act or rules, you will find that since it is a dual GST, both state and center have to comply. If you will find at most of the places that if one approves, then it will be deemed that the other person has also approved. So therefore, it is a provision which is providing for that if state tax officers or the union territory tax officers are extending the dates, then it will be deemed to be notified by the commissioner, meaning thereby the center also have also approved it or have also issued the notification. Provided also that while making a deposit in form PMT 06, such a registered person may A, for the month of the quarter, for the first month of the quarter, take into account the balance in the electronic cash ledger. B, for the second month of the quarter, take into account the balance in the electronic cash ledger, excluding the tax due for the first month. So therefore, it is further specified that whenever you are making a deposit in PMT 06, you as a registered person, for the first month of the quarter, you can take into account the balance, whatever balance is there, you can take into account that balance. And for the second month of the quarter, again, you can take into account the balance of the electronic cash ledger, excluding the tax due for the first month, meaning thereby the second, you need to reduce the tax due for the first month, and accordingly, you will have to take care of the second month by way of reducing the liability of the first month or the tax due of the first month. Subrule 4, the amount deposited by the registered persons under subrule 3 above shall be debited while filing the return for this said quarter in Form GSTR 3B, and any claim of refund of such amount lying in the balance in the electronic cash ledger, if any, out of the amount so deposited shall be permitted only after the return in GSTR 3B for the said quarter has been filed. So therefore, it says that you are depositing the amount every month, and then at the end of the quarter, you are filing GSTR 3B. Out of that amount of GSTR 3B, the liabilities, you will knock it off or set it off from the balance of electronic cash ledger or credit ledger, whichever is applicable. And then what you will have to do is, if there is any balance in the electronic cash ledger, you can opt for the refund of the balance after the filing of return under section 39, that is GSTR 3B. Now, relevant sections, notifications, this all anyways is going to be the part. Then you will, the important part in this particular provision is that as we have already discussed, Rule 61 has been amended various times, and all those amendments are mentioned here. Most of the times, Rule 61 sub Rule 5 has been amended. Friends, you all might be remembering after the judgment of AAP and Company, wherein the Honorable Gujarat High Court has said that GSTR 3B is not a return under Section 39. The law was amended retrospectively, wherein now they have said, by virtue of a notification 49/2019, dated 9th October 2019, by way of insertion of a proviso wherein they have said that GSTR 3B is nothing but a return. So we are not entering into all those things. These are the amendments in the said rule, and you must have the background of it, because from 1st January onwards, 1st January 2021 onwards, I do agree that the amendment has taken place and GSTR 3B is made a return. But prior to that, whenever the assessment comes, whenever the audit comes, or whenever any search occurs, you will have to keep in mind the provisions of Rule 61 sub Rule 5 or the provisions of Rule 61 per se for the purpose of assessment, audit, search and seizure. Moving to next rule, Rule 61 capital A, manner of opting for furnishing quarterly returns. How you can opt for furnishing of the quarterly return? Every registered person intending to furnish return on a quarterly basis under proviso to subsection 1 of section 39 shall, in accordance with the conditions and restrictions notified in this regard, indicate his preference for furnishing of return on quarterly basis electronically on a common portal from the first day of the second month in the preceding quarter, first day of the second month of the preceding quarter, till the last date of the first month of the quarter for which the option is being exercised. So this is the time frame which is given for the purpose of selection or opting for the scheme of quarterly filing of returns. What is the time limit? It is first day of the second month of the preceding quarter till the last day of the first month of the quarter. It means if it is June, like June ending, that means quarter is April to June, and then July to September you are opting. So it can start from 1st May 2021, let's say, and it can end till 31st of July, first month, last day of the first month of the quarter, that means 31st of July. Proviso is provided that where such option has been exercised once, the said registered person shall continue to furnish the return on a quarterly basis for future tax periods unless the said registered person becomes ineligible for furnishing the return on a quarterly basis as per the conditions and restrictions notified in this regard, or opts for furnishing of return on a monthly basis electronically on the common portal. So it has to continue once the option is exercised that you want to fall into the quarterly filing scheme, and the option is exercised once, you will have to continue filing the returns on a quarterly basis unless either you are not eligible now for furnishing on a quarterly basis, or you are opting yourself out from the scheme and now you want to furnish on a monthly basis. Provided further that A registered person shall not be eligible to opt for furnishing quarterly return in case the last return due on the date of exercising the option has not been furnished. In case you fail to furnish the last return, which was due on the date you want to exercise the option, if it is not filed, then you will not be eligible for furnishing the quarterly return. Subrule 2, a registered person whose aggregate turnover exceeds 5 crore rupees during the current financial year shall opt for furnishing of return on a monthly basis electronically on the common portal from the first month of the quarter succeeding the quarter during which the aggregate turnover exceeds 5 crores. So if in case you are filing under the quarterly filing scheme and your turnover exceeds 5 crores, then you can opt out of that quarterly filing scheme and you can pay or file on a monthly basis from the first month of the quarter succeeding the quarter during which your turnover exceeds 5 crores. So if let's say in the quarter of September, ending September, your turnover exceeds 5 crores, then from the first month of the quarter succeeding the quarter, meaning thereby October onwards, you can start filing on monthly basis. This again is a new rule which has been inserted by virtue of 10/2017. Just give me 1 minute. Now rule 62. Form and manner of submission of statement and returns. Every registered person paying tax under section 10 shall, meaning thereby this rule is applicable for the taxpayers who have opted for the composition and therefore furnish a statement every quarter or as the case may be part thereof containing the details of payment of self-assessed tax in form GST CMP 08 till the 18th day of month succeeding such quarter. That means the due date is 18th of the next month and after the quarter, and furnish a return for every financial year or as the case may be part thereof in GSTR 4 till the 30th day of April following the end of the financial year, electronically through the common portal, either directly or through a facilitation center notified by the commissioner. So therefore, it is quite clear that CMP 08 needs to be filed every quarter after the end of the quarter, 18th of next month, and he also needs to file one return till the 30th day of April, that is after the completion of the year, in GSTR 4. Subrule 2 says every registered person furnishing the statement under Subrule 1 shall discharge his liability towards tax or interest payable under the Act or the provisions of this chapter by debiting the electronic cash ledger, because the credit is not allowed. In case of composition levy, the condition prescribed is that you will not be allowed to take input tax credit. And since the credit is not allowed, you will have to bear in mind that the entire payment of tax liability will have to be done through the electronic cash ledger only. Sub rule 3, the return furnished under sub rule 1 shall include the invoice-wise interstate and intra-state inward supplies received from registered and unregistered person. This is mandated. You will have to provide the details invoice-wise of the inward supplies, whether it is intra-state or interstate, and consolidated details of outward supplies made. Since the question of credit is not there, and the credit by the recipient is also not there because you have never charged any tax, there is no point in showing the invoice-wise details in your returns so far as outward supplies are concerned. And therefore, it is allowed that they can make a consolidated figure also and pay the taxes accordingly. Friends, I am not going into the much deep and details of this these rules pertaining to returns, because these are the procedural aspects, and therefore I believe that you all are better than me, because I have never filed a return under GST. I have never visualized, I have never entered into the system, and I have never tried to do that. And you all are doing the same on a day-to-day basis. So therefore you are much aware, and these are not complicated. So therefore I'm not discussing in detail. I'm doing only the job, which is clause by clause reading. And if anything comes to my mind, then sharing that. Subrule 4, a registered person who has opted to pay tax under section 10 from the beginning of a financial year shall, where required, furnish the details of outward and inward supplies and return under Rule 59, 60, 61 relating to the period during which the said person was liable to furnish such details and returns. If he was liable to furnish those details, then he can do that till the due date of furnishing the return for the month of September of the succeeding financial year, or furnishing of the annual return, whichever is earlier. So since this option has been given, and even 16.4, even section 37, 38, 39, all those sections provide for this. So therefore it is allowed by virtue of sub rule 4 that once you are converting yourself into composition levy, till the time you are into the regular levy, if you want to file returns under 59, 60, 61, then you are allowed to do that. But there is a time limit which is applicable, and that is till the month of September return filing date, due date, or the annual return filing date, whichever is earlier. Sub rule 5, a registered person opting to withdraw from the composition scheme at his own motion, or where option is withdrawn at the instance of the proper officer, shall, where required, furnish a statement in CMP 08 for the period for which he has paid tax under composition scheme till the 18th day of the month succeeding the quarter in which the date of withdrawal falls, and furnish a return in GSTR 4 for the said period till the 30th day of April following the end of the financial year within which such withdrawal falls. So therefore, this is, I would say, peri materia with what we have read in sub rule 1. And therefore, no need to worry. If you are opting out, or if the officer is making you opt out from the composition levy, then the law says that you will have to make the filing of CMP 08, and at the same time, you also are required to file GSTR 4 for the period till which you were under composition, and then for the rest of the period of the financial year, you can file the regular returns which is applicable to you by virtue of rules 59, 60, 61. Now moving to rule 63. This rule has also been amended quite a few times. Form and manner of submission of return by non-resident taxable person. Section 27. If anybody has attended yesterday's session of GST Act, we have covered section 27 there. And section 27 deals with casual taxable person and non-resident taxable person. So this rule, rule 63, speaks about the form and the manner of submission of return by a non-resident taxable person who is covered under section 27 of the CGST Act. Every registered person, non-resident taxable person, shall furnish a return in GSTR 5 electronically through the common portal, either directly or through a facilitation center. He can either file directly or through a facilitation center. It is common, notified by the commissioner, including therein the details of outward supplies and inward supplies, and shall pay the tax, interest, fees, penalty, or any other same sum payable under the Act or provisions of this chapter within 20 days after the end of the tax period, or within 7 days after the last day of the validity period of registration, whichever is earlier. Friends, as we all are aware, that in case of casual taxable person or a non-resident taxable person, the time limit for which the registration can be granted to us is 90 days, and it can be further extended for further period of 90 days. So therefore, we need to keep this in mind. We need to remember this, and the provision is that either you will have to file by 20th of the next month, end of the tax period, that is monthly or quarterly, whatsoever is applicable, it is going to be monthly only. And the second option is within 7 days, you can also file within, or the second option is you will have to file within 7 days of if the validity of your registration has expired. So whichever is earlier, that will be the due date for filing GSTR 5 for non-resident taxable person. Rule 64. Rule 64 provides for form and manner of submission of returns by person providing online information in database, access or retrieval services. So it says every registered person providing online information and database access or retrieval services, that is OIDAR, commonly like said, from a place outside India to a person in India other than a registered person. So an individual who is utilizing the online database access or retrieval system services from a portal which is operated from or managed from a place outside India, then he will have to file a return in GSTR 5 capital A on or before 20th day of the month succeeding the calendar month or part thereof. So again the due date for GSTR 5 capital A is also 20th of the next month. Rule 65. Form and manner of submission of return by an input service distributor. I hope and I expect, I presume that we all are aware about the input service distributor concept. So anyone who is registered as an input service distributor, he is also supposed to file the return in Form GSTR 6 as per Rule 65. It says every input service distributor shall, on the basis of the details contained in Form GSTR 6 capital A, and where required, after adding, correcting or deleting the details furnished electronically, the return in Form GSTR 6 containing the details of tax invoices on which credit has been received and those issued under Section 20 through the common portal, either directly or through a facilitation center notified by the commissioner. So therefore 6A has to be filed and 6 has to be filed. So this is the case of input service distributor, Rule 65. Moving to Rule 66, which is dealing with the provisions pertaining to the persons on whom the liability of tax deduction at source is imposed by the law. Form and manner of submission of return by a person required to deduct tax at source. Subsection 1. Every registered person required to deduct tax at source under Section 15(1), hereinafter in this rule referred to as deductor, shall furnish a return in Form GSTR 7 electronically through the common portal, either directly or from a facilitation center notified by the commissioner. So GSTR 7 is to be filed by the tax deductors. The details furnished by the deductor under Subrule 1 shall be made available electronically to each of the deductees on the common portal after filing of Form GSTR 7 for claiming the amount of tax deducted in his electronic cash ledger after validation. So therefore, whatever amount is being deducted, that will be reflected in electronic cash ledger after the validation of the same. The certificate referred to in subsection 3 of Section 51 shall be made available electronically to the deductee on the common portal in Form GSTR 7 capital A on the basis of return furnished under Subrule 1. So the certificate also, which is specified in the law, will be on the basis of the form which is filed. Moving further to Rule 67, which deals with form and manner of submission of statements of supplies through an electronic commerce operator. Every electronic commerce operator required to collect tax at source under Section 52 shall furnish a statement in Form GSTR 8 electronically on the common portal, either directly or from a facilitation center notified by the commissioner containing details of supplies effected through such operator and the amount of tax collected required under subsection 1 of section 52. So this is GSTR 8 that needs to be filed by the tax collector. And the details which is furnished by the operator under subrule 1 shall be made available electronically to each of the suppliers on the common portal after filing of GSTR 8 for claiming the amount of tax collected in his electronic cash ledger after validation. So this is what is allowed to be claimed. By mistake, it is written subsection, it is subrule 1 and subrule 2. We'll be rectifying the same. Moving to next, which is rule 67 capital A. Manner of furnishing of return or details of outward supplies by short messaging service facility. Now this reminds me one thing. Long back when GST was introduced and e-way bill and all those things were getting introduced, we have made a lot of representations before the government, either by meeting the Honorable Finance Minister or by meeting the Honorable Revenue Secretary or some other authorities. At that point in time, the authorities have commented on one aspect, that we are going to make GST law so simple that even the filings can be done on the basis of SMSs. So this rule 67 capital A reminds me of that. It says manner of furnishing of return or details of outward supplies by short messaging service facility. Notwithstanding anything contained in this chapter, it is overriding all the sub rules and rules. For a registered person who is required to furnish a nil return under section 39 in form GSTR 3B or a nil details of outward supply under section 37 that is in form GSTR 1 or a nil statement in CMP 08 for a tax period, any reference to electronic furnishing shall include furnishing of the said return or the details of outward supplies or a statement through a short messaging services using the registered mobile number, and the said return or the details of the outward supplies or statement shall be verified by a registered mobile number based one-time password facility. So OTP facility will be there, and accordingly all those persons who are supposed to file a nil return, nil GSTR 1 or GSTR 3B or CMP 08 can file that by virtue of a short messaging services which is being provided. They can do that by using the OTP facilities also. Explanation. For the purpose of this rule, a nil return or nil details of outward supplies or a nil statement shall mean a return under section 39 or details of outward supplies under section 37 or a statement under rule 62 for a tax period that has nil or no entry in all the tables in GSTR 3B or GSTR 1 or CMP 08. So there has to be a nil means completely no entry in any of the tables whatsoever. Then only this rule can be made applicable, rule 67 capital A. Now moving to next rule, which is rule number 68. It says notice to non-filers of returns. A notice in form GSTR 3A shall be issued electronically to a registered person who fails to furnish return under section 39 or 44 or 45 or 52. 39 means normal return, 44 means annual return, 45 means the first return, I think, or the final return, I'm not sure. Final return, or section 52 means the return by the tax collected at source people who are responsible for collection of tax at source. So friends, this was the chapter pertaining to the returns under GST. Now, before concluding this session, I would like to specify one thing. See, we all are aware, and I have time and again repeatedly said this, that This series is merely for the purpose of being updated by the rules which are applicable as on date. It has nothing to do with the in-depth analysis. Yes, we are doing the analysis wherever it is required, as I have specified in Rule 61. The rest of the rules which we have discussed today are the procedural, and the forms are mentioned, and the forms are supposed to be filed on the portals. Now, friends, next week we'll be taking up the next chapter, and we'll try to sum up the series within next 3-4 sessions. I'll try to do that, and then we'll have 1 or 2 query sessions. So if any queries are there, then certainly you can be ready yourself, and the week in which we'll take up the queries, we can very well discuss all the queries pertaining to you. But the only one disclaimer which I would like to place before all of you is that since I'm not into the compliance practice, I may not be able to answer the compliance questions pertaining to filing of returns or error in the forms. But yes, anything which is pertaining to the law or the uh, procedure which is specified in the rules, we'll certainly be discussing on that, and we'll try to resolve the queries, whatever the participants are having. Now, if any queries are there for today's session, the queries can be asked.
Yes, one query.
Hmm.
So my case is in GST audit. We are landowners entered into joint development agreement on revenue sharing. Officer is saying that we being landowners are required to pay GST. Can you please help with the case?
See, what I understand is GST audit is being conducted, and you are landowners who have entered into a joint development agreement on a revenue share basis. Officer is telling you that you are a landowner and you are liable to pay GST. See, first and foremost, please appreciate that sale of land is not a supply under GST. It is covered into Schedule 3. Now, what you are doing here is, you, if I'm not wrong, let's say your land is worth 5 crores, and the construction on the same and the sale value is going to be 10 crores. And you have entered into a revenue sharing wherein you have said that 50% of whatever you will get, you will have to give that to me as my share against the supply of land. See, this is a disputed part and disputed question, because joint development agreement or giving the development rights are indirectly made taxable. From 2019, it has been clarified that if the tax is not paid, then it will be attracting the reverse charge. My answer to this query would be, since you have asked the case laws also, one of the cases which we have argued was pertaining to plotting of land, and there are certain other issues which are pending before the authorities, before advanced ruling authorities or the high courts. My simple argument would be that since it is a benefit arising out of land, if you read General Clauses Act, if you read the Constitution, immovable property includes land and the benefit which is arising out of land. So my answer would be that whatever revenue you are getting as a revenue sharing or on a revenue sharing basis is against, technically it is against the supply of land, and therefore there should not be any tax liability. That is my submission and my way of reading into it. Maybe it will take some time, and it will be a litigative question. You have to litigate, because the officer, since he is pressing you to make the payment of GST, he may not agree to this logic, and he will say that you are liable to pay the tax. But as per me, it is against the sale supply of land, and therefore not taxable by virtue of para 5 of Schedule 3 to the GST Act. Yes, sir.
The next question. Since GSTR 3B what not returned, then ITC can be availed till filing of annual returns.
Yes, this is the interpretation. You are rightly interpreting it, but unfortunately, the order of the Honorable High Court of Gujarat has been stayed by the Honorable Supreme Court. The matter is still pending. It is yet to be argued. I have heard that on 20th of September 2021 it is listed. Maybe next or next to next week when we'll come, if I would have argued that, then I'll certainly update all of you. But since it is stayed and the rule has been amended retrospectively, 61.5, the officers will never buy this argument that GSTR 3B was not a return under Section 39. Let the Honorable Supreme Court intervene and decide on this question, that whether 3B was a return or not. If they decide that 3B was not a return till 31st December 2020, then in that case, yes, you can avail the credit till the filing of annual return as per the provisions of the law. Yes.
Yes, so the next question is, जो जॉइंट डेवलपमेंट एग्रीमेंट के बेसिस पे था, उसमें ये थोड़ा एडिशन उन्होंने किया है कि अगर जॉइंट डेवलपमेंट एग्रीमेंट एरिया शेयरिंग के बेसिस पे हो तो
The area sharing is what? If you have a let's say a land 10,000 yards and you are constructing, let's say 1 lakh square feet, then 50,000 you will retain against the land and 50,000 will be retained by the developer. So this is again one and the same thing. Whatever you are getting, this is against the sale of the land. So I am of the same view that tax will not be applicable.
Okay, sir. The next question is, what is the implication of not paying interest in GSTR 3B? Whether penalty can be charged for not paying interest as that was earlier in service tax?
No, as per me, no. As per me, the penalty cannot be charged. Penalty for non-compliance, a general penalty may be invoked by the officers, but I'm of the view that penalty in this case is not applicable. Penalty will not be applicable. Yes, the returns are already being filed and the question is only of the payment of interest, which you can very well pay at the later point in time. So I am of the view the penalty should not be made applicable.
The next question is, sir, request to share the status of RCM on ocean freight, matter pending before Supreme Court, Mohit Minerals.
It is yet pending and it is expected to be heard out maybe in end of September or maybe in October. Supreme Court has started taking up the cases of GST for the final disposals. One of the case which was pertaining to the refund in case of inverted duty, so far as input services are concerned, has already been argued. The arguments got completed on 12th of August 2021, and we are expecting the order to be pronounced maybe tomorrow. So it's showing in the cause list of the Honorable Supreme Court that they can pronounce the order tomorrow. So we'll have to wait and watch.
So all questions are over.
Okay. Fine. So once again, thanks to all of you. Today it was a short session because we intended only to cover the balance part of the returns. And let's meet next week and we'll try to cover up as soon as possible. Once again, I'm thankful to each one of you for the patience hearing and for the opportunity given to me. Thank you, friends. Thank you so much.